This is the Trek Marlin 8, a bike which has been a stalwart of Trek's range for a fair while now, and for 2023 it moves into its third generation. This brings a brand new frame with a number of changes over the older model. Here's 4 of them. Number 1, more progressive geometry. Number 2, a trail orientated cockpit and dropper seat post. Number 3, a 100mm air sprung travel fork. And finally, number 4, commuter-friendly features like pannier rack and kickstand mounts. So the big question, can it pull dual duty as an entry-level trail shredder as well as a comfortable commuter? Well, we put the bike to the test and I'm going to tell you the things we liked and of course the things we didn't like so much. If you like our impartial reviews, then subscribe if you haven't already and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the next one. Hardtails make a great choice for riders just starting their mountain bike journey, and the heart of any good bike is of course the frame. The Marlin uses a sturdy aluminium frame, which Trek calls Alpha Silver. This is their least sophisticated and therefore heaviest series of aluminium in its range. Compared to the pricier frames, the Marlin's tubes have less mechanical forming and hydroforming, but that doesn't mean it scrimps on features. Trek has dropped the drive side chainstay to improve tyre clearance, meaning you can now fit in a chunky 29 by 2.4 inch mountain bike tyre like the stylish Tanwall Maxxis Ardents that come fitted to the bike as standard with a bit of room to spare. The frame also features de rigueur internal cable routing that runs through the down tube and then externally on the underside of the chainstays. We'll come back to that later though, as it's not all as rosy as it sounds. There's also some well thought out chainstay protection to help silence any chain slap on rough descent, while the frame is rated to take a longer travel 120mm fork if you feel the need to upgrade it along the line. It's worth noting though that the 44mm head tube can take a tapered steerer tube. The RockShox Judy fork uses an old school straight 1 1/8 inch steerer tube. So if you want to swap the fork over, you'll need to change the lower headset as well, so something to bear in mind. Trek have also used a slightly different rear axle on this bike, which functions like a hybrid of a traditional 135mm quick release skewer and a modern through axle. You basically get some of the benefits of a through axle, like the easy installation and instantly square alignment. However, it does mean it's potentially flexier than a through axle setup. One thing which almost everyone at BikeRadar will be delighted to hear is that the new Marlin uses a good old-fashioned BSA threaded bottom bracket. This means it's easier for home maintenance when it comes to replacing the bearings down there. The aforementioned pannier rack and kickstand mounts also add a good degree of practicality on a bike designed to pull dual duty. We've got all this way into this video without talking about Trek's claim that the Marlin has more progressive geometry than its predecessor, so let's take a scan over the numbers. The head angle is a whopping 3 degrees slacker than the old bike at 66.5 degrees, and this is paired with a moderately steep 74-degree seat tube angle. Following the mountain bike design trends, it's also longer with a 90mm increase in reach, bringing it to a fairly modern 470mm for this size large bike. It's available in a big range of sizes, from extra small through to extra large, with different wheel sizes depending on the chosen frame size. If you want to know more about the bike's geometry, then head to the written review on BikeRadar.com, the link is below. The Marlin 8 sits at the top of the tree above the Marlin 6 and 7 models and costs a very reasonable £1,230. For that you get a robust and dependable package with a few things that stand out, both good and the not so good. Up front here we have a RockShox Judy Silver fork, turning out 100mm of travel via an easily adjustable air spring. It also gets a turnkey lockout and rebound adjustment, so you can set the fork to work better for your weight and riding style. This is a nice thing to have over a coil sprung fork that you sometimes find on bikes at this price point, as they're heavier and harder to adjust for different riders. What's not so good is that the fork uses a standard quick release axle rather than a through axle. We'll see what effect this has on the trail later. Drive is taken care of by SRAM's SX Eagle 1x12 drivetrain, given a wide 11 to 52 spread across the cassette, while a 30-tooth chainring gives you plenty of scope for winching up steep climbs. It uses Shimano's MT200 two-piston brakes with long brake levers, but I'll come on to how these feel in the descending performance part of the review. Most of the remaining parts come from Trek's Bontrager house brand. This includes the Covey wheels, which are tubeless ready and have a 23mm internal width, though it is a real shame that they are not pre-taped, making converting the Maxxis Ardents to tubeless a little more hassle than it potentially could be. For a full breakdown of the Marlin 8 spec, check out the link in the description. Given its price point, the Marlin 8 is never going to be a super light race weapon. So the 14.56 kilogram weight is reasonable for the price, and it feels lighter out on the trail. The seated pedaling position is fairly neutral thanks to the 74-degree seat angle, but we wouldn't mind if it was a touch steeper, given we had to shift our weight a bit further forward on more technical and steeper climbs, like the one I've just gone up there. While sliding the saddle forward would help to alleviate this, it would shorten the seated reach, which we felt could be longer still than the 470mm it has to start with. The mid-width 750mm handlebar and 50mm stem are a smart decision from Trek, and do allow you to negotiate tighter uphill corners with relative ease. Personally, however, I would like to see a wider handlebar as standard, given that you can always cut it down if you want a narrower bar. We do also think Trek has missed a trick by not speccing a remote lockout for the fork. Given the bike's split personality designed to cater to trails and commuting, a remote lockout would feel more intuitive to beginners and make it easier to use on the move. Given there's already a host of hoses and cables at the front of the bike, it wouldn't degrade the front end aesthetics too much either. A real highlight of this bike though are the Maxxis Ardent tyres. Not only are these high volume with a 2.4-inch width to boost comfort, but they are also excellent all-rounders. The EXO-TR casing is tough yet compliant, and overall grip is very good, even on slippery root-infested trails, though you can find their limits in deeper mud. Given the bike's intentions though, they strike a fine balance between grip and speed, only feeling slightly sluggish on tarmac. It is, however, a real shame that despite them being tubeless ready, our test bike didn't come with tubeless tape installed, making the must-have change to a tubeless setup a little bit harder. It's definitely something we'd recommend though to make the most of the Ardent's traction and robustness. SRAM's SX Eagle drivetrain shifts between gears functionally, but is pretty unremarkable. There's a slight bit of play in the shifter before you initiate a gear change, and even with the correct setup, the shifting really isn't the smoothest. We think Shimano's excellent Dior drivetrain would make a better choice, but at least SX Eagle is cross-compatible with better components in SRAM's range, so there is plenty of upgrade potential, starting with that sloppy shifter. Turning things around, and the Marlin 8 is overall a fun and competent bike to ride in a range of scenarios befitting of the price point. The more progressive geometry makes for calmer handling, and the Marlin 8 is surprisingly playful on fast and flowy trails, fitting its beginner-orientated target market. Take it onto more technical trails and it might surprise you in its ability to get you down most things you can throw at it, within reason of course. There's only so much you can do with that little 100mm travel fork up front. Before you start dreaming of hitting up your local bike park though, there's a fairly obvious downside to this bike. The fairly basic RockShox Judy is easy to adjust, but the lack of a through axle means it can feel flexy under load, which robs you of steering precision and confidence. The internal cable routing was also rather noisy and rattly on more challenging terrain, which is a tad annoying to say the very least. Trek says production bikes come with a foam liner, so this shouldn't happen to you like it did with us on our test bike. The Shimano MT200 brakes are merely adequate performers and require more than one finger on the lever to come to a complete halt on steeper trails. Trek specs resin pads and resin-only disc brake rotors. To get the most out of the bike, we would really recommend upgrading the rotors and pads to unlock more braking potential for a minimal outlay. It's nice to see the Marlin 8 come with a dropper post though, as it really allows you to make the most of its calmer handling and should help give you the confidence to push your limits and learn new skills. A small nitpick, but the lever is a little plasticky and flexy, but it does the job perfectly fine, and the Trans-X dropper post is a relatively smooth and reliable performer, though a little bit of play did develop towards the end of testing. One to look out for if we were able to keep hold of the bike for a little bit longer. You're probably here for the off-road review, so I'll keep this part quick. But the Marlin was also tested in the urban jungle around BikeRadar HQ. Mountain bikes aren't going to get you to your workplace or the shops in record speed, but they are sometimes a safer option with better braking and wider tyres for increased grip. Don't forget that the bike also has pannier rack and kickstand mounts. The Marlin 8 proved an adept commuting companion, with the riding position proving comfortable and the Judy fork absorbing hits with ease. They may not be our first choice for commuting, but the Maxxis Ardents roll well enough to justify their all-rounder status and provide an overall highlight of the spec. Overall then, how does the Trek Marlin 8 stack up? Well, we think it's a versatile and solid performer that provides a fine gateway into the sport of mountain biking. The frame's geometry make it a fun and willing companion on green and blue trails, while being competent enough to handle most red trails as well. Trek has bestowed the Marlin 8 with a sensible spec list that should prove reliable if a little unspectacular. That said, there are a few limitations to the spec that end up holding the Marlin back on technical trails. The lack of through axles at either end of the bike limits performance and upgrade potential, and the geometry could be even more progressive if your ultimate goal is to ride more challenging terrain. Ultimately though, the Trek Marlin 8 is a solid first step into mountain biking that will put a smile on your face and be a willing and versatile companion. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our upcoming bike reviews.